Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Joe from GadgetryTech, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 headphones from Kiwi Ears, and all 3 of these were sent to me by Linsole.com, so huge thanks to them for making this video possible. Now, Linsole is a huge e-tailer. They sell a bunch of audio gear internationally. I've purchased several things from them in the past to be shipped that I didn't review, but this was sent to me for review. They didn't solicit any particular feedback, and I'm not going to be using any affiliate links in the description below because I never want you to think there's any kind of conflict of interest there, and no money was exchanged in making this video. I've rejected any form of monetization from anything I'm covering unless I declare it as like a sponsored ad placement in the beginning. So none of that stuff is happening here, but again, thanks to them for making this video possible. So I'm going to do my best to include a chapter going forward called Too Long Didn't Watch, because your time is precious and life is short. And I'm going to start with the Kiwi Ears Ellipse. This is just a highlight. I'm going to get into this in depth as the video evolves, but just as a very high level, the Ellipse is a very affordable headphone. It is an open back headphone that uses leatherette pads, somewhat of a moderate to stronger clamp force, and the sound signature is kind of the opposite of what I expect from an open back, especially in this price range. It's basically the polar opposite of the Philips SHP 9500 that I really like in this price range. Very bass heavy and very relaxed in the mid-range. We're going to get into all that, but that's the Ellipse at a high level. Next, you have the Kiwi Ears Ardor, which is a wireless Bluetooth headphone with active noise cancellation, and it has an MSRP of only $100. It's actually my favorite one of the 3 here when it comes to overall value, partly because the sound signature is more agreeable in general. It is definitely more spicy in the treble compared to the other 2, but the overall voicing and tuning is decent, especially considering, again, that it's a Bluetooth wireless active noise cancellation headphone. Then you have the Atheia, which is a $350 confusing closed-back headphone with a wonderful chassis. The suspension strap is damn near perfect, as is the comfort. They really nailed the comfort and build quality, but frankly, the sound quality isn't quite there to me, especially when you compare it to the much less expensive, a bit less comfortable, and less well-built FIO FT1. So I'm going to get into all the how, what, and why among all 3 models, but that's these 3 at a high level. Okay, so let's start with the Kiwi Ears Ellipse, which has a retail price of only $76. The build quality is actually really nice considering the price range. This is actually a metal yoke, so I'm really happy with the build quality there, and I like the design as well. It's kind of a simple aesthetic, very traditional looking headphone. Naturally uses leatherette pads. Most headphones do, unless you get into more expensive headphones or something that likes to use suede or velour, which is common on more of the open backs in the mid-range price. But either way, I like the metal build quality. This headband is adequately padded. It's actually a thin metal headband inside with symmetrical padding, frankly, on both sides. You get a telescoping yoke. The ear pad dimension is 55 millimeters width and height because it's a circle, and the pad depth is just over 20 millimeters. The clamp force is on the moderate to stronger side as well, coming in closer to 600 grams. So it does squeeze your head a little bit more, but I find the padding adequate enough. The issue with the padding, as with any headphone or headset with leatherette, is this helps with trapping in sound, although this is an open back, so it's kind of less relevant. It helps with bass delivery, but it does build up some heat over time. It can also break down over time. So if you're concerned with longevity, thankfully they make it very easy to pop this off so you can replace the pad with your own. I haven't tried pad swapping a biodynamic pad just because I think this lip is a little bit wider than a lot of the biodynamic pads I've worked with in the past, but it's a similar pad dimension as far as what you feel on your ear. So if you're familiar with a biodynamic headphone, this is going to feel relatively similar as far as dimensions go. When you look at the bottom of the chassis, you get dual 3.5 millimeter inputs, which is great. That's very universal, and this is a TS sleeved cable. It's a rather long cable with a nylon jacket. It's like a scratchy shoelace material. Detachable, 3.5 to 1/4 inch adapter. It's a fine cable. It's $70, just over 70 bucks. So it gets a pass in certain areas. I don't think the cable is anything crazy to write home about, as is the comfort. It's kind of like what you expect, and to me, there's nothing egregious here of something really good or really bad. It's right in the middle of the road. Now, what's confusing about the Ellipse, frankly, is the sound signature, just because it's not that it's terrible, it's just, it sounds like an affordable closed back, not an open back. And I was really hoping to get another good open back in this price range, because frankly, for about $70, it kind of goes to the Philips SHP 9500. I like the way that headphone's tuned a lot. It's a little bit hotter in the treble, but overall it still sounds quite natural and detailed. So the Ellipse kind of goes the opposite direction. It's very bass heavy and bass thick. It goes all the way well into the mid bass, and it sounds kind of thick and boomy as a result. The other issue is it's followed by this monstrous void in the mid-range, which kind of saps away some of the detail. and clarity that you would expect. A lot of instruments, a lot of guitars, vocals, they're all recessed. At least they're relaxed sounding. There's nothing punishing about this sound signature whatsoever, but it doesn't sound too detailed or analytical. So to summarize this sound signature, if you're looking for a more analytical, natural sound, you listen to a lot of vocals and acoustics, I would lean towards the Philips SHP 9500, comparable price. It's not as comfortable in certain areas, but I do like that it uses a cloth material, so it's more breathable, just more scratchy. However, this guy is definitely what you look for if you want an affordable open back, but you want a lot of bass, because this thing delivers gobs of bass in that regard. The mid and upper treble tuning is really nice on this. There's no sharp sibilants. It's not overly emphasized. It's not overly dark. It's kind of masked by the bass and mid-range tuning, frankly. It's so egregious with the tilt of a lot of bass and a little bit of mid-range that it just sounds like a dark, relaxed sounding headphone. So nothing special here. It's a relatively safe tune. If you're going again for the open back space, then I would consider the Philips SHP 9500. If you like the idea of this kind of tuning, but are open to a closed back, Linsol.com also sells the SimGot EP5, which is a very similar price range. And frankly, I like the tuning of this guy better. I think they execute it really well. Comfort is okay on this. I think the build quality is a little bit more basic. This seems much more robust, but purely in the sound quality department, I think the EP5 from SimGot did a good job here. The ear pads on the SimGot are still leatherette, so you're not getting away from that, and the opening is noticeably smaller, but hey, at least it uses dual 3.5 millimeters. So this is a good alternative as well. Then you have the Kiwi Ears Ardor, which I'm going to call Ardor a lot because I just frankly always think of Star Wars Andor, which is an awesome TV series. So that's what we're going to go with. The Ardor is a $100 MSRP Bluetooth headphone. It has active noise cancellation. There's even a little button right here on the chassis to toggle between ANC on, ANC off, and transparency mode. When the headphone is turned on and paired to your phone, you get volume controls, which is pretty self-explanatory. This power button also doubles as an action button, so if you are listening to music on your phone, you can just tap that to play pause your music. You have a microphone here to handle calls, and it has a 3.5 millimeter input, which I am very pleased to say the 3.5 millimeter input does work when this headphone is turned off. So it does work as an analog headphone. Now, as you can see, I kind of just did a spoiler here. The headphone chassis itself is also collapsible, so it's very easy to stow away. That's like that on both sides. You get a little bit of swivel here and tilt. So articulation is good, but you can hear a little bit of a squeak. It squeaks a little bit. Leatherette pad up here, adequate padding, but again, nothing special. Metal telescoping band, which is cool, but this entire thing is plastic. This part here is kind of like a leatherette material with the embossed Kiwi Ears logo. I actually think it's a nice little attention to detail, and it helps kind of improve the visible quality, if you will. It doesn't necessarily feel more premium, but as far as wearing it on your head, it doesn't look as cheap. It also comes with a rather nice carrying case, which is rather compact. And I like this canvas material. You find this even on much more expensive headphones, so I'm pleased to see that. Now, obviously, because the ear pads rotate, you can stow it like this. Then you have the two included cables in the box because naturally it's going to use USB-C for charging, so relatively nice. The comfort itself is actually pretty good. It's not going to be any kind of a game changer here. It's good because the clamp force is light, it's moderate enough, and this padding is adequate. It's basic, but it's only on top here. This is obviously the part that's going to press on your head, so this is the most important part. But this is more padding than Sony gives on the much more expensive XM6, for example, with a comparably wide headband. So comfort isn't terrible here. The pads themselves, because they're leatherette and they're smaller, they are going to have a little bit of a heat buildup. It's just the nature of having leatherette pads on an active noise cancellation headphone because you need to create a really good seal for the ANC to work properly. So it is going to feel a little hot and spicy over time, but thanks to the moderate clamp force, it's actually lighter than the Ellipse as far as how hard it squeezes your head. You can easily still get through a movie or two on an airplane, and the battery life's going to carry you through that as well. It has a unique driver configuration as well, using a 40mm dynamic driver and a 10mm coaxial centric tweeter in the center. Also dynamic, but it's interesting that they went with a two-way system in this price. That's usually not something you see. The sound quality of the Ardor out of the box is actually my favorite of the three here out of the box, which doesn't say a lot, but to me it's just the more versatile sound profile. ANC on versus off does make an impact on the sound quality characteristics of it, or at least the tuning of this particular headphone. But regardless of how it shows on frequency response, if you are listening to more rap and EDM or something with a lot of sub bass like movies, for example, you'll find that having active noise cancellation on, which you do hear a little voice prompt when you enable it, that's going to give you more extended sub bass. Everything below 30 hertz seems to come in stronger with ANC on. With it off or on, regardless, it has a pretty similar sound signature. It's not a major shift, and even with the headset or headphone turned off, I have similar sound on the analog input as well, which is really nice. So the one thing that stands out with this guy though is it's definitely brighter than the other two. It's much stronger, between like 6 to 10,000 hertz. You're going to notice much more treble spikiness, if you will. So it's not going to expose itself with every single song, but anything with a lot of metallic instruments are going to occasionally really come through, and it's going to be a bit sharp. So depending on what you're listening to, sometimes that will sneak up on you, and it can be a little fatiguing. So at lower to moderate volumes, the sound signature is great. But just be warned, at higher volumes, that might be a little much. The sound signature isn't anything revolutionary. It sounds very much like a sub $100 wireless headphone. So they're not like breaking boundaries here. I don't think it's terrible. I think the bass being a little bit leaner than these two helps lend itself well to a wider variety of music, as long as that treble spike isn't as much of an issue. One of the things is it's not super resolving or detailed sounding, so if you're looking for instrument separation and detail, you're really not going to find that on most wireless headphones in general, at least especially in this price range. So it's not changing that, expectation of what you get for this price. The issue with the treble tuning is it's a little bit harder to EQ because it's kind of peaky. It's not like the entire treble as a whole is really sharp. So as a result, if you reduce treble as a whole, it's going to sound kind of stunted and lacking in detail even more. So if you address the sibilance and spikiness, you might actually have a less resolving and less rewarding sound for songs that don't have that kind of sibilance issue. So it's kind of an interesting one. It's definitely not perfect. I think the biggest takeaway here is a more clean sound profile, but at the sacrifice of a sparkly and somewhat sharp treble. And then you have the last and most expensive headphone here, which is the Kiwi Ears Atheia, which has a $350 MSRP price tag and comes with this wonderful walnut ear cup. This one's kind of different. It uses a 50mm dynamic driver and a 14.5mm planar magnetic driver in the center. So it's also coaxially mounted, meaning that it's in the center of the driver itself, which is really important for imaging, performance, and consistency. It doesn't guarantee a certain sound signature. It's just a matter of it's using two drivers on each side to deliver the sound you're hearing. Now, this is relatively easy to drive as well, partly because it's a closed back, so you're not competing with environmental noises as much, but it's rated for 32 ohms with 102 decibel sensitivity rating, so you can pretty much plug it into everything and get pretty good volume out of it. Just like the Ardor, you get a carrying case with the Atheia, and it too is a really nice case. It's a little bit bigger because the headphone is physically larger, but you get the same type of surface material, a really nice liner, and then a nice little cubby here to stow this cable once you wrap it up. So on the note of the cable, not a huge fan of it, to be honest. It's an interesting looking cable, kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type thing, because you have this clear TPU, almost catheter-like looking cable on one side, which does help with microphonics, so I'll give it that. Then you have a very much looking like a shoelace cable going into your audio source. So you get a 3.5mm termination, 1/4-inch adapter. There's no balance cable included, but that's not a big deal. It's not really needed, partly because this is so easy to drive. That's really the only reason why you'd ever consider needing a balance cable. But the terminations, so dual 3.5, this uses TRS instead of TS, so tip ring sleeve on the Atheia, and it has like kind of an Audio-Technica style locking mechanism where you just press it in and then you rotate it and it locks. So I really like the security of it. Mine is an earlier production unit, so for some reason, if you flip the termination, like go left to right, right to left, I get no sound whatsoever. There's something wrong with the wiring. That's already been fixed in later production samples, so you won't have that issue. But if you are curious about that, maybe flip it and see if yours works. It's not an issue with the included cable, but if you ever buy an aftermarket one, you might run into issues. So that's just something to keep in mind. Thankfully, the quality control issues stop with just that cable termination problem, because the Atheia's selling point to me is the build quality and comfort. This is an exceptional headphone in this price. I've used and worn much more expensive headphones that don't feel as nice as this. This is a metal headband. You get a suspension strap, which has a self-adjusting mechanism. It's a wide strap and it's padded, and it uses a breathable material that feels very much like Alcantara. On top of that, you still get the telescoping yoke, which is a very smooth mechanism here. And this entire assembly, everything here is metal. The yoke is metal, the posts, of course, the buckle, and this headband, it feels so robust, and as a result, you actually get what you feel like you're paying for at $350 when it comes to build quality. Hand feel is excellent as well because there's no squeaks, just the right amount of resistance. They really dial this in. And because you get full articulation, you get pivot and rotation, it's going to conform to your head very easily. The clamp force is damn near perfect. For the weight of this headphone, I haven't found, or I don't think I'd prefer any change in clamp force from what it ships out of the box. I can wear this for a very long period of time. And it's aided by the fact that not only is the strap crazy comfortable, so whether you have a head full of hair, you're wearing a hat, whatever your head shape may be, this is probably going to fit you quite well. And the ear pads are extremely soft, so there's really nothing going against any particular pain point for comfort. The only thing worth pointing out is this is using a leatherette pad, which is going to help lock in the sound and improve bass delivery. But anytime, again, just like the others, when you go to a leatherette, it's going to build up some heat and get a little bit spicy over time. So that's worth considering. Pad dimensions are excellent on the Atheia though. It's not the widest or tallest pad, but it's large enough for most average ears, and the pad depth is deeper than both of these other models, coming in just under 30 millimeters. So I like the pad depth, I like the comfort, love the build quality, and frankly, I even like the aesthetic. This is a real walnut cup, and again, you have the Kiwi ears embossed inside the wood there. I think this is clean. It may not be for everybody. I think maybe I'd switch the cable, but overall, I feel like it's a really nice looking and feeling headphone. So the Atheia has a rather unfortunate sound tuning, especially when you consider the build quality, comfort, and price. You know, I'd expected more, to be honest. So just to start, it's boasting the whole dual driver thing. And again, I mentioned earlier, that doesn't guarantee any particular sound tuning in this case. And the Atheia's biggest issue, frankly, is the massive, massive lift at 100 hertz in terms of bass. The mid-bass is just so strong. It's punchy and tight because the bass rolls off in the sub-bass, which is usually not what you want on a closeback that has a lot of bass. So it's a punchy, tight, boomy, and honestly bloated bass, and it truncates a lot of other frequencies because of that. It's not helped that it's complemented by a scoop in the mid-range, just under 500 hertz. And then when you look at the higher frequencies, basically between 4,000 and 7,000 hertz, it's just scooped too much considering how much bass this has. That tuning wouldn't be as bad if the bass was leaner because it would still sound like a nice, relaxing, fairly neutral sound if you're looking for like a cozy, dark sound. But this is frankly just tons of mid bass and a dark sound signature. And as a result, when you have those frequencies relaxed the way they are, if you listen to a lot of metallic instruments, you might hear like the initial ring of something that's metallic or even brass instruments. But the problem is when you get into trailing tones, like if you hit a cymbal or a triangle, you might hear that first, hit. But all of the trailing rings that follows, they're greatly stunted when you have this kind of frequency response. So I feel more like I'm listening to music in a closet rather than my studio. Now with extensive EQ, there's definitely some potential here, but I think that's kind of a cop-out because at $350, I don't think EQ can justify or completely validate your purchase. I'm not going to lie with the fact that when I've done EQ to really tame all of that bass and boost the areas that I find lacking, I am pretty happy with the performance at the end of the day, just because the comfort and build quality, outside from the cable issue, is as good as it is. I do enjoy wearing these for a long period of time. I just think for how it comes out of the box at this price range, I don't want to say it's unacceptable because that's just my opinion, but frankly, the sound profile is pretty disappointing to me. I don't feel like I'm listening to a $350 headphone, especially when there are just countless amazing headphones below this price range that can still have good bass, but have much more clarity and a natural presentation to it. Music still sounds closer to what I expect them to sound like. Just keep in mind, this is just my opinion though. I'm just one person and you might have a different preference, and I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I can just tell you based off my experience with many other headphones. I always try to find a place for where every headphone lies in the whole grand scheme of a huge variety of things you can purchase out there. The big advantage here is the comfort and build quality, minus the cable issue, but the sound quality, just frankly, from my experience, is just lacking in the detail department, and I don't understand the value there. So I want to talk about one thing I did, because I recently, my last video I released was on my new HyperX gaming headset StealthZ pads. These pads are designed to alleviate bass and improve detail retrieval on a HyperX gaming headset, which typically has a lot of mid bass and as a result colors the sound. And if you look, this looks like a rather similar, shape. So naturally, curiosity got the best of me because I designed this pad for a specific sound signature, and those issues are present on the Atheia. So I swapped it and I measured it. And as you could see, the end result was quite shocking. Now, I'm not doing this as a plug. This is a pad that I did a collab with Wicked Cushions on. This is why I like having frequency response measurements, because I can show you clearly the difference. To me, the sound quality with my Stealth pad is much more agreeable. I enjoy these significantly more once I pad swap them. This is a passive tuning thing. It's not using any kind of EQ, and it basically preserves the sub bass that this has, but greatly tables off the mid bass blow issue, while also filling some of the void that I had at 4,000 to 7,000 hertz. So I got a little bit more detail with a more natural sounding bass. These pads are a little bit more leaky. Part of why this works the way it does is because I'm not creating a full seal. I use a velour pad, which has a leatherette liner, which is, again, all intentional. I designed this pad to have a very specific sound signature that helped with the sub bass performance. So to me, it's a much better headphone with this, but you can get similar results, of course, just by doing EQ. If you don't have access to EQ and you already own this and you want to have a more neutral sound, I consider the pad, but obviously I make it, so take that for what you will. Maybe experiment with it. There's a return policy on those pads if you bought them on Amazon, for example. So I'm not doing it to plug it, but there's no denying the sound signature change, which I measured and observed. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case. All right, and that about wraps up the video. So huge thanks for making it to the end, and to linsoul.com again for sending these over. I think my issue with this whole lineup is they're not terrible. The issue is they're kind of beat by several models that compete with them in every price range, and in some cases less. The FIO FT1, just to cover that very quickly, is an insane closeback under $200. It sounds remarkable for the price. The Atheia is much more comfortable and is built significantly better. So you are paying a bit more for the chassis improvements that you get with the Atheia, but if it's purely sound quality you're after for the money and you care a little bit less about the overall chassis durability and build, I think the FT1 outguns it for less money. I've kind of made my point about these guys when I've done comparisons before, so I don't want to revisit it all. These aren't bad, but to me, I think they're just not as competitive in the market as they should be, considering it's a newer launch. But either way, again, thanks to Linsoul for sending this. They also sent 2 Kiwi Ears IEMs that I'll be reviewing soon that, frankly, I've really enjoyed, so I'm excited to share that video. That one's going to be coming. They also sent the Zenz Menger Top Pro and T Pros, which are 2 wonderful mid to high-end IEMs that are very, very competitive, both on audio performance for music and for gaming. So I'm really excited to release that video soon as well. So thank you so much for making it to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to see you at the next video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.